A new frontier for the Devil Wears Prada is space. This is 5 years after their Zombie EP showed a transition in sound a little bit and a transition in style, which many people praised. So, is this something that's going to happen again with the Space EP? Many people praised the Zombie style, considering it sort of showed a little bit of that old school underground aesthetic. There were clips within that album, and the songwriting overall just seemed to improve. There seemed to be a little bit more of a focus, because the band prior to that definitely seemed to be more interested in naming their songs weird things as opposed to kind of getting down to the point, which seemed to be a problem in the latter portion of the 2000s. Everything had to have some ridiculous title. But with the Space EP, we have a similar charm to it. We do have a lot of these footage clips, either that or a lot of these film clips, or just in general, considering there's a space theme to it and this is a conceptual EP, a lot of things that have to do with the storyline itself. So it's almost like simulated clips from like a Mission Control, and I immediately think of all sorts of different things whenever that comes to mind. Everything from Apollo 13 to some of the stuff that you could hear from like Between the Buried and Me or something like that. But this is an album of metalcore. So if you're into metalcore, immediately you're going to kind of dig this a little bit, and you probably know this band quite well and respect and revere them, unless of course you don't. But this 6-track EP definitely does things with a little bit more tact, and also does things with a little bit more in the way of creativity, even though it seems as though the formula itself has become a bit pretty well known and pretty well tired. And that's the one problem with metalcore that's starting to showcase itself, is that even though there are a couple of bands that are still really producing some pretty good metalcore albums, the formula itself is getting a bit tired and almost needs a little bit of dormancy in order to recaptivate itself and really get a lot of that boom back into its overall sound quality. However, I do have to say that with tracks like Planet A and Alien to start this one off, even with the formula being a bit predictable, the bombastic sound that is coupled around the overall story of this makes the lyricism sort of the central focus. It's one that has a little bit more root in the whole storytelling art and the storytelling complex, which reminds me that, you know, Operation Mindcrime, the new Tate Reich band, is going to be doing a trilogy of albums, and I think I might prefer this over that. I don't know. We're going to see. But the interesting portion of the story is the fact that this is an individual that seems to have kind of gone to a different land, to a different place, or we find ourselves in a new world, and the alien is in fact us. And whether you want to look at that from a deeper meaning or whatever is really up to you. But musically speaking, this is tight-coupled metalcore that has a shift between heavier, more scream-based vocals with a little bit of a snarl to them, mixed with those cleans that you hear from a lot of the warped groups. I hate to say it like that because it sounds derogatory, but it has sort of that same tone to it. So that clean to rough mix is also another idea that's getting a little bit tired, but at the same time actually suits the Devil Wears Prada kind of nicely. Moongod, though, is the third track on this EP and has a little bit more charm, not to mention it has a lot of creativity to it. This is one that, even though it continues some of the similar aesthetics, also really uses a little bit more of a spacey overtone, which is something I think that should have been present throughout the course of this album, is a very large spacey overtone from the musical standpoint, in order to sort of couple with the theme and walk with it hand in hand. I feel like it would have given a little bit more of a charm to this disc, and it probably would have illuminated it a little bit better. Sometimes you do have to set up your theme with a little bit of music that kind of goes right along hand in hand with it, even if it does seem like it's a bit cliche. And the reason why is because it's a familiar aesthetic, but at the same time, with your own spin, you can definitely go places with that and add sort of a new dynamic to it. You know, it's similar to trying to add a new fresh spin on an old legend and make sure it doesn't fucking sparkle, because, you know, we see what happened with Twilight with that. Overall, whenever you go through the second portion of this disc, you have a short little introduction, and then you go into Supernova, and then finally Asteroid, which I find Asteroid to be probably the more, if not the most creative track on this disc, considering right in the middle we kind of get a passage that describes a little bit more of the end point and the end game of this little idea. And I feel that this does a very good job in sort of finishing up the storyline aesthetic to this disc, while also really captivating the audience and captivating a listener by using that formula, using that aesthetic that we all know from metalcore, and most of us probably know from the Devil Wears Prada, and give it a little bit of a jolt with some defibrillators, and give it a little bit of livelihood, and continue to help it flourish just a little bit, and complete this cycle with a nice little endpoint, a nice little finale. So overall, this is kind of difficult for me, because this EP is one where, with metalcore in general, I've grown a little bit tired of the idea. But the Devil Wears Prada sort of does their best, but it feels just very typical. It's an album that really kind of is scant whenever it comes to really fulfilling on a full level the overall idea and feeling of being in space. I really don't feel as connected to the story as perhaps I could have, with a little bit more of the storytelling being handled within the music itself. It was something where I found myself a little bit more focused on trying to decipher the lyricism in order to follow along with the story, and you can do that and, you know, kind of figure out the story on your own, but it just didn't kind of grip me the full way and the full method in which it should have, and that's kind of a problem. I think that this group has a lot that they could potentially offer to people. I can see why many individuals really like this band and kind of gravitate toward them. However, I feel that this EP just sort of, it exists. It's one that does some things in order to move you along and stick, you know, kind of guide you through this whole concept and this whole idea, but it does not 100% captivate and not 100% deliver for a listener and for the overall concept that they were trying to go for. Not going to really give this a score. I would say that if you're not a huge fan of metalcore, kind of approach this at your own risk. If you're a Devil Wears Prada fan, you'll probably be excited considering it's their first material in 2 years, and you'll probably end up digging this a lot. But this would be one where I'm kind of just tooling this and kind of deeming it average. It's just kind of there. But I want to know what you guys think about the Space EP from the Devil Wears Prada. I want to, do you guys like this band? Do you guys enjoy this band at all? Or do you dig them? Do you hate them? What's the deal? What's up? Let me know in the comments below. And I'll talk to you guys later. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm tired. Peace.